Namaste everyone. I am Min Prasad Dawadi, a student of MPhil second semester at Nepal Open University. Today I am going to deliver a short presentation on ethical considerations in research. First of all, we need to know the meaning of ethics itself or ethical principles. Simply, ethics refers to the principles of morality, moral duty, and obligation. Ethical principles or norms are concerned with the appropriate moral behavior, moral conduct that the researcher has to show while carrying out research. These are the norms or the standards that distinguish between right and wrong in research. Ethical norms differentiate between acceptable and unacceptable behavior. They determine academic integrity, reliability, and validity of the research findings. Overall, they promote honesty, sincerity, and integrity of research, and their contribution to avoid all sorts of misconduct or dishonest behavior in research project. Now, the major ethical issues in conducting research. While carrying out research, the researcher has to maintain honesty, sincerity, credibility, and trustworthiness. If he or she is able to maintain these things, we can say the researcher is a good moral character. The researcher has considered the ethical issues, the confidentiality of the concerned people, that may be respondents or certain authorities, should be maintained. Privacy, the degree of privacy should be maintained. All sorts of plagiarism should be avoided. For maintaining academic integrity, the researcher has to respect the intellectual property or the research property rights. There should not be any fabrication, manipulation, and falsification of information or data in the research. All sorts of errors should be avoided. That may be the errors from the side of the researcher or the participants. Now, when the researcher has to follow the ethical norms, as I mentioned earlier, ethical norms should be followed when the researcher is involved in research. Before the research, during the research, and even after the research. So prior to conducting the study, while beginning the study, while collecting data, analyzing data, and at last while reporting or sharing data or finding, ethical norms should be duly considered, duly followed. Now, before carrying out the research or before prior to conducting the study, what ethical norms should be taken into consideration by the researcher? During that time, the researcher has to obtain necessary permission from the concerned authorities, from the participants, from the respondents, from the research site. Good relations should be built up by the researcher with the concerned people. There must be negotiation. The researcher should negotiate authorship for the publication. He or she should examine the professional association standards. He or she should gain local permission from the site and participants. And he or she has to enter the research site without any vested interest. So if the researcher has certain vested interest, that is considered as unethical research practice. Now, while beginning the study, The researcher has to consider some ethical standards, ethical issues. He or she has to identify a research problem that benefits the participants, maximum participants, while carrying out the data, collecting data. The purpose, the reason behind it should be disclosed. The participants should not be given any pressure to sign in the consent form. The norms, the values of the local people should be respected. The researcher should be sensitive to the needs of certain vulnerable population. He or she should not inferiorize the people or the respondents or the informants from whom he is going to collect the information or the data. And while collecting the data also, the ethical norms should be taken into consideration. The researcher should make certain that all the participants receive the same treatment. It means there should not be any biasness or the partiality. The participants should not be deceived. The potential power imbalances should be taken into consideration. The participants should not be exploited or victimized. The researcher should not use participants by gathering data and leaving the site. And he or she should avoid collecting the harmful information. So these things should be duly considered while collecting the information or data. Equally, while analyzing and interpreting data also, the researcher should follow some ethical norms or the standards. He or she should avoid siding with respondents. It means the researcher has to maintain neutrality, objectivity, or impartiality. Some researchers may only disclose the positive results. They may sideline the negative aspects or negative results. This is considered as unethical practice. So avoiding or the researcher has to avoid disclosing only positive results. The reality should be exposed. Reality should be brought out, not in the biased manner. Privacy and anonymity of the participants should be respected. And as I mentioned earlier also, fabrication, distortion, manipulation of the information should be avoided by the researcher. And now, while reporting or sharing and storing data, the researcher has to follow certain ethical norms. He or she has to avoid falsifying the authorship, data, evidence, findings, and conclusion. So there must be fair practice, objective practice. He or she should not plagiarize or duplicate publications. So all sorts of plagiarism, intellectual dishonesty should be avoided. The researcher has to avoid disclosing information that will harm the participants. He or she should present information in a clear manner, understandable manner, and straightforward manner. He or she should provide complete proof of agreement with the ethical issues. He or she should state who owns the data from the study. Mean the source should be credited, should be cited by following a particular documentation style. That may be APA, MLA, or any other. So this is all about ethical considerations in research. I prepared these slides by going through these sources, references. I went through Creswell 2013, 2014, Lincoln YS 2009, Mertens and P. Ginsberg. So from these sources I collected this information. That's all. Thank you very much. I expect your feedback. Please don't feel any hesitation to put forward your comment in the comment section of my YouTube channel. Thank you very much.